My name's Sam from the channel Prep Medic, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to stop life-threatening hemorrhage from a junctional site utilizing wound packing. Wound packing is performed whenever there is a deep wound with arterial hemorrhage in a junctional site. So junctional sites are considered the base of the neck, the armpit, also known as the axilla, and the groin. Now, what makes these places unique is that tourniquets can't usually get up high enough to control that bleeding, which is why we have to go to this intervention. Wound packing can also be used on distal extremities, so the lower parts of the arm, if you do not have a tourniquet available to apply to that patient. There are several products on the market to help you stop bleeding from junctional sites. So in front of you, I have several hemostatic options. Now this is gauze that has a hemostatic agent embedded inside the fabric that when packed into a wound starts to facilitate the clotting process. While these are largely considered to be the gold standard in junctional site bleeding control, studies have shown that while these do stop bleeding slightly faster, there is no difference in mortality or morbidity with the hemostatic agent over regular packing gauze. So while those will range from $30 to $50, this gauze here and several others like it on the market from different manufacturers will run you about $3. So when we're packing a wound, like I said, we're looking at the junctional sites. And the first thing we're gonna do is expose that wound with trauma shears or lifting the shirt up or whatever it might be. And we wanna visualize it. If there's a lot of blood clouding your vision, you can take a finger, you can do a quick blood sweep to expose exactly where it's bleeding from. If there are large clots in the way, try not to remove those because you're just gonna be fighting yourself. Now, when we're going to pack a wound, one of the first things I do is I take the gauze and I'll make a little ball at the end. I've already identified exactly where the artery is inside of that wound, and the key is to place it directly over that artery with as pinpoint as pressure as possible. So I'm gonna take this gauze, I'm gonna push it into the wound, down to the artery, and now I'm gonna trade fingers. I don't wanna come out of the wound with one finger, then reapply the pressure. I want to try to do a one-for-one trade. It's going to fill up, and we want to hold pressure for as long as possible, a minimum of 3 minutes with hemostatic agents, longer without hemostatic agents. Now, the more direct the pressure, the more effective it will be. So we don't want to diffuse the pressure with our palms if possible. We want to keep that pressure over with our fingers. Now, if we are unable to hold that pressure for a prolonged period of time, maybe your scene isn't entirely safe, the patient has to move, etc., we can take a pressure dressing and wrap that tightly over this site to help hold this gauze in place. The only time you will ever remove this gauze is if you are using a hemostatic agent, in which case if it bleeds through, you will remove the gauze, you can come to the other side of the gauze that hasn't been contaminated and place it into the wound. If you're using non-hemostatic agent, redouble your pressure and you can pack a little bit more gauze on top of it. In the case of a laceration with arterial involvement, the key is to identify exactly where the artery is. This entire wound will not be an arterial laceration. So once we get to that laceration, we're gonna do the finger sweep to figure out exactly where it is bleeding. But once again, we're not gonna do that if it will involve removing blood clots. We're going to take our gauze, we're gonna identify exactly where that's coming from. We're gonna press that up against the wound and we're gonna fill it as much as possible. Once we get it as full as we can, we're going to hold direct pressure. For more medical videos related to riding motorcycles, check out the other videos within this series. If you want to take a deeper dive into EMS and emergency medicine in general, feel free to follow me on my YouTube channel, Prep Medic, or I'm on Instagram.